Hi, welcome to Walking the Path. I'm going to be talking to people who are on a spiritual journey, who want to share with us their experiences about what they've found on the journey. So if you're interested in spirituality and how you can embed it into your life, come and walk the path with me. Thanks to Bliss Russell for joining us today. She's speaking to us from the beautiful village of Bybury, which is one of my favourite places, but I haven't been there for a while. And so I'm so jealous because she's sitting outside by the river and some swans. So, hello, Bliss, how are you?
Hello. Hi, Chris. Thank you very much for inviting me. Yeah, I'm very well. I've been enjoying the sunshine. It's nice to walk around outdoors today.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So welcome to Walking the Path with me, and you'll just have to imagine that I'm walking around Bybury with you in spirit.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to meet up here one day, definitely.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah. So anyway, so this is all about talking about the spiritual path that we find ourselves on. So I do have one or two questions to ask you, but we don't have to stick to them. We can go off on whatever tangent takes our fancy. But I will start off by saying, did you always know that you were a spiritual person, or did this come to you later in life?
I think I've always known. I mean, I remember being about 5 and feeling as though I was connecting to something which was beyond myself. But I think before that, I have memories of being with other types of entities, if that makes sense. So I'm not sure if those things were in dreams or if those were things that really happened. I don't think it really matters. But yeah, so when I was very young, I had a white lady who would come and take me on adventures. And so I think that was something that was, almost being facilitated really by if she was another being or if she was part of my higher self. I can't really be sure. But then when I was about 5, I started to take charge of my own kind of path. And so that's when I started working with like candle meditations. And I'm just asking my mum about what she was doing. So she's got a very strong spiritual practice, and she's followed lots of different traditions. So I think I started to take an interest on what was on her altar from I was about 5. And, I was told not never to touch it.
Yeah. I was a bit like that myself, but I had the invisible friends, except they weren't invisible to me. It just came as a bit of a shock when nobody else could see them. I didn't realise that until I would be about 5 or 6.
Yeah.
You mentioned your mother. So what sort was she, like an eclectic spiritual person?
Yeah, I would describe her as that. I mean, she would describe herself as being a witch,
Right.
But during the time that I was growing up, she was really exploring lots of different spiritual paths. So she was involved with this sort of esoteric, the Grail quest kind of spirituality.
Okay,
so this was back in the 80s, and so she kind of fused this kind of idea of the lineage of the Sangreal and the kind of the esoteric union, the marriage of Christ and Mary Magdalene. So Mum was really interested in that. But she had also linked it into the ideas of Erich von Daniken. So he was all into like ancient aliens and, the idea that there were these kind of sacred bloodlines that were connecting us to star beings. So it became something that was really quite diverse. So she was involved with organizations like the Temple of Isis or, the Fellowship of Isis, what they're known as now, and something called the Eastern Star as well, which is like the kind of women's equivalent of the Freemasons, I think. So she was doing a lot of, this kind of esoteric ceremonial magic work.
Wow.
But then she was involved in doing her own research as well. And so the kind of books that were around the house were, you know, relating to like Sufism and esoteric Islam, or books that were about, you know, kind of tantric Hinduism and the kind of Brahmin teachings, you know, of the Rig Veda. So I've always been around this stuff, you know, and then when I got older, I wanted to do something completely different. So when I was a young adult, I began to follow a Buddhist path. So that was the one thing that I couldn't find any books about in my mum's house. So I was heavily into Buddhism, really from when I was about 16 until my mid-20s. And, you know, I've had some Buddhist empowerments. I've done some chanting and spent lots of time meditating to, you know, people like Medicine Buddha and White and Green Tara. So more sort of Tibetan lineages of Buddhism.
Where did you go then on your path? Because you said that that was sort of 16 to mid-20s.
Yeah, so I was sort of heavily involved with this idea of Buddhism, which was outside of organized religion, because, you know, anyone could be a Buddhist. And I think that's what I liked about it, was that you could be involved with another spiritual path, but still be practicing Buddhist philosophy and ways of living in the world. But I found myself gradually being drawn more and more to spending time in sacred sites. So I spent a lot of time on pilgrimage, really, like, you know, driving around or with another friend in a car. We'd get like a megalithic site map and we'd go and find all of the standing stones, you know, that were in a different region. And I still do that now. I mean, I go around the world making pilgrimage to different temples and sacred sites. But yeah, we had a copy of Julian Cope, The Modern Antiquarian. Have you read that book? Yeah.
I'm aware of his work,
We decided that we'd try and find all the sites that were listed in that book. Of course, now they're all on a website, you know, megalithic portal. It's much easier. So you can just Google them and find them. And I think through being on the land and through visiting these ancient portal places, I think I found a connection much more with earth-based spirituality. And so I spent a few years around druids and people that were in the kind of rainbow camp communities. But I've really almost kind of specialized, I guess. I've refined my practice now, so it's much more of a goddess-based spirituality. So for the past probably 10 years or so, really, I would describe myself as being a priestess, and that I'm bringing through goddess energy. And I think as I've become more confident and more connected to her in all of her different manifestations, I can see how in a lot of ways that's really what my mother was doing as well. So she was bringing that through, but in quite an eclectic way. So I think it's funny because I feel like I've come home to the message that she was always giving me, but I found my own way there. I found my own way home to the goddess, and you know, particularly to the mother goddess.
When you were at the centre, I'm sorry to butt in, but you did teach me, or I was on the Lomi course you taught. So in that case, you went to Hawaii at one stage, am I right?
Oh yeah, and I had a really strong connection with Pele, who is the volcano goddess in Hawaii. But there's a whole pantheon of gods and goddesses. There's a whole mythological framework, really, that the healing is channeled through. So these stories are really the stories of our own souls, and you know, how do we. The thing with Pele is that she's all about righteous anger and rage. And it's like, how do we connect with those fierce, powerful emotions in a way that is actually regenerating, you know, because the lava from the volcano regenerates the land. It actually creates the land. You know, and those areas that have been burned, they become the most fertile parts of the island. So I think there's a lot you can learn about, you know, how to channel your rage in a way that is actually nourishing and creative, rather than it being something that's destructive to yourself or others. So yeah, I loved going over there, and I loved learning about the philosophies of healing in Hawaii. So the idea that we have like 3 elements to our soul. So we have an element which is connected to our body. We have an element which is connected to how we express ourselves in the world. And we have an element which relates to our higher self, or to our ancestors, however you want to describe that. But it's like the best possible part of you. And so the Hawaiians believe that if any of those three aspects is out of balance, that's what creates disease, whether that be a mental or a physical or an emotional issue. It's probably because you've become disconnected from one part of your soul.
That is interesting.
Yeah, so the idea of Lomi is that you're really inviting the soul back into the whole of the self, the whole person. You're welcoming the soul back into, the four corners of the body is how they describe it. So you're welcoming people home to themselves.
That leads me to remember another course you taught at the centre, which I didn't take, but I know was very successful. It was the closing the bones ceremony with the rebozo. Can you just explain to me, because I missed all this, where that comes from and how it works?
Oh, yeah, of course. So, I mean, that's a sacred ceremony. It's traditionally performed by midwives, and it comes from a lineage in South America. So the traditional midwife, she would assist at the birth, and then after the birth, this ceremony would happen. And again, it's really about welcoming the power back into the body. So the idea is that for a mother, when she's given birth, then her body is open, and that she could actually lose energy like continuously after the birth unless her energy is brought back into her womb, and then there's a sealing of that energy body. So closing the bones works primarily with the pelvis and the hips, but you can actually bind someone at all of their major chakras. So the idea is that you use a scarf, or it's known in Mexico as a rebozo, or in Ecuador, my teacher Rocio Alarcon, she describes the scarf as being a manta. And she describes the practice of closing as hipping. So in Ecuador, they call it hipping with a manta. And so you rock the hips, you rock the body in the scarf, and then you make a knot. So you twist the two ends of the scarf, and then this creates a kind of closing, a kind of tightening effect for the pelvis, and then you actually seal off and kind of tie off that binding. So you tuck it in and you tuck it under the body, so it feels a little bit like being held. And a lot of my clients and students, they say it's like they feel like they're being rocked by their mothers, or that they're back in the womb. There's that sense of feminine holding. So when I teach this ceremony, we bind at the ankles, the thighs, the hips, the rib cage, the shoulders, and the head. So you bind the whole of the recipient, and then it's almost like a sort of sensory deprivation. So they're spending that time really reconnecting with themselves, and it's very good for trauma. Or if you are coming to the end of one phase in your life and the beginning of another. So it's kind of like a rite of passage where you can reconnect. So I did one the other day for someone that had just gone through a breakup. So it's really good if you've come out of a relationship, or if you're starting a new job. It doesn't necessarily have to be about giving birth, or that's traditionally how it was used. It's more about releasing yourself from the past and really reclaiming your power, in order to move forward into what you're doing next in your life. So I love that ceremony, and it's really beautiful with all the scarves. It's quite of all the things that I do, I'd say it's probably one of my favorites, because I just think it's so simple. Anyone can do it, but it has such powerful benefits.
Did you ever take any form of spiritual development training yourself?
Yeah, so as I say, over the years, I've done some Buddhist courses and empowerments, and then I've become involved with the goddess movement. I went through a phase of exploring that kind of sacred union pathway with a lady called Anaya Sophia. So I spent several years training with her in Sacred Union teachings, and then I moved on to do a priestess of Rhiannon training with Katinka Soatens, she's like my mentor really, and we've got a really close relationship. So I've been on temple pilgrimages with her to different sites around the world, but I've also coming to the end of 3 years of work as her student really in a group. So that's very much about sisterhood and about building healthy village dynamics. So it's about healing relationships and really allowing ourselves to shine our gifts. So how do we move beyond this wounding, the women's wounds, of competition, of shaming, of power over? How do we step beyond that into a space of real sisterhood and brotherhood, and really, so the work that Katinka does is about relationships and sexuality, but it's also about community and, how do we really show up for one another in our communities in a way that's authentic, having clear boundaries and really understanding how we can shine our gifts in a way that is transcending that sense of, having to put someone else down to lift yourself up. So we're trying to move beyond that, and it is, to me, it is the work that is how we're gonna literally smash the patriarchy, is we're just gonna show up in the fullness of who we are and really love each other, really live with open hearts.
This is so badly needed at this time. It seems to be the only alternative to me.
So important. I think we just need to learn how to love each other in a way that is actually not harmful.
Well, yes. Yeah, I know you're hoping to get out to Malta at some stage.
I'd love to go back there. Yeah. So I have some great friends over in Malta. I really recommend, if you don't follow them, there's a shop called Magic Touch, and Rose Carnuana, she's my friend in Malta. She's another priestess, and she does these amazing empowerment circles and over there, and different retreats. So I have led a women's retreat in Malta, where we visited lots of sacred sites and on Malta and Gozo. I would absolutely love to go back over there. As soon as we can fly again, I'll be saving up and planning another retreat there. I've got a really strong connection to that place, and there's something about the sweetness of the land there. I found out that Malta is on the same geological strata as the Cotswolds. So we are really connected. We're really connected through the earth. We've got the same limestone as the yellow golden kind of stone in Malta is the same stone that's here and is building a lot of the Cotswold walls, and the kind of monuments. The
gorgeous honey-coloured stone, isn't it beautiful?
Yeah, they're Cotswold 7 long barrows that we have here, but they're very similar to some of the temples in Malta in terms of these great big megalithic stones. There's something about using these huge limestone slabs to heal and to create sacred space. I think that's gone on in many places.
Yes.
That's probably why it felt like home, because it was.
Yes. Yes, because it looked familiar to you. Yeah. So we've gone through the questions that I wanted to ask, but the last question that I wanted to ask you, which I ask everybody, or the two. Well, the first one is, where do you think your path might take you next?
Oh, wow. That's a big question, isn't it?
It's a biggie.
Yeah. Well, we're working on a community project to open a goddess temple in Stroud.
Yeah.
So I would like to hope that we're going to open the doors of a temple that has 4 walls, in an actual building in town. Yeah. So I can really see that project unfolding and coming to fruition. So I'm probably going to spend a lot more time just holding a container for other people.
Yeah.
I think that's really important, actually, creating safe spaces in a community for other people to shine. And I know that's what you've done with the Amethyst Centre, you're like an inspiration to me, really, because
it's my intention to do it.
Yeah.
So I have to hold that intention.
Great. It's so wonderful.
I can't ever say I've done it, because that means it's over. But what I can say is I have the intention to create this wonderful space for other people to thrive in. And so that keeps the intention and the space real and alive.
I think that's so important. And I think more sharing of the teachings. I've been teaching an online course in priestessing with the moon and the womb this year. And we're just coming to the second intake of that. So we're beginning again in May, 11th of May. It's called the Lunar Womb Temple Training. So I'd like to be teaching more of that stuff, really. It's so wonderful to share it with other people that are on a path. And I think what I love is giving people those signposts, and then, you know, they work out the answers for themselves. I think when you're inspired by something, it really encourages you to explore it. And I want to be a way shower, really, for people to find their own path with spirit. Because I think there's no right or wrong way, is there? It's just like we're all, what Ram Dass says, we're all walking each other home. And I think, it's beautiful. It's really, I'm so excited about now. I think things are starting to open up again. So we've got a lot more opportunities to connect in person. So I think that's good as well. There
is a big shift taking place in the energies that I've noticed over the last 2 weeks. Certainly, definitely over the last 2 weeks since the solstice, the equinox. So things are shifting in a big way now. The last question I have for you, which leads on from what you've just said, is what advice would you give to somebody who came to you for advice in spiritual matters?
Yeah, I would definitely say the first thing I would recommend would be to go out into nature. Yeah. I think that's really where you can find the most immediate connection, really, to spirit and to the self, is to be outdoors. And, you know, even if you can't get outdoors, maybe you can have a plant in your house and you can meditate with a house plant, you know. But there's something about being with other living things. Yes. There's something about having like a connection with the earth. If you're walking on the land and you can see the sky and you can see the trees and the rocks and the things that are growing around you, I think that will always bring you back into your center. And then you can have amazing insights just by being present with where you're at in the moment. So you don't have to do anything special. You don't have to sign up for a course. You know, you can just go for a walk in the park and you can find the divine.
Absolutely. And as we are divine, we have the divine within us. Yeah. It's nice to be able to recognize the divine in other people. So with that, I'll say namaste to you, Bliss. The divine in me salutes the divine in you. And
thank you.
Thank you for joining me on the path today. We've come to the end of the path for today. If you'd like to support the podcast by sponsoring it, please get in touch. Or you can visit our website, www.amethystcentre.com, or our Patreon or Facebook page for Walking the Path. See you next time.